my connection with death started when I was like 22 years old because I lost my mom, and it was like too early for losing your mom at this age. And although she was sick throughout my upbringing because she had cancer, I never thought that she would die because we never had this conversation. I wish we had this conversation, to be honest. I don't know if there is any culture where they, like in the West side, they really talk about death. And I think that it's very important that we have to start speaking about it because death is the only thing that is sure that's going to happen to our body after we're born. And yet no one speaks about it.
It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. This episode is supported by Mnemostheny, a project I've been building alongside this podcast. Mnemostheny is a simple way to tell your story in your own voice. It's a guided, audio-first conversation with me where we capture the parts of your life that matter to you, where you came from, the people who shaped you, the seasons that changed you, and the moments you don't want to lose. It's not therapy and it's not a performance. It's just a real conversation that becomes a private audio keepsake you can share with the people you love or keep for yourself. If you want to learn more, you can find it at mnemostheny.com. That's NEMOSENE.com. Hey, welcome back or welcome here if this is your first time. There's a version of grief that doesn't make the obituary section. The kind that comes from losing a pet or watching the world you grew up in slowly change into something unrecognizable. Most of us have felt that kind of loss, but very few of us have a name for it. This week's caller is joining us from Sweden, originally from Greece, and they have lived a lot of life. They lost their mom at 22, and without conversations they wish they'd had. Then a cat who got them through many years of hard times. Then a dog who was, by their own description, an extension of themselves. And somewhere inside of all that loss, they became someone who helps other people grieve. Not just for the deaths that got funerals, but for the ones that didn't. The ones people feel embarrassed to name out loud because they're not sure the loss is big enough to count. And I'll be honest with you, I know that feeling personally. One of the biggest reasons I started this project was my fear around losing my dog, Jackson. And for a long time, I couldn't bring myself to say that out loud because he's a dog. I was convinced you'd think less of me for it, that it didn't count in some way. This conversation helped me understand why that embarrassment exists and why it shouldn't. This one is warm and wide-ranging and generally funny in pieces. It gets into ecological grief, anticipatory grief, what animals can teach us about love, and why so many of us are walking around carrying losses we've never given ourselves permission to feel. There's also a really powerful moment in here that I've heard from a couple people about how losing a pet can hit harder sometimes than losing a person, and why that might not be as strange as it sounds. Let's get into the call. I hope you enjoy.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing at the end?
I'm good. It's always interesting doing these international calls where you're at the end of your day and I'm at the beginning of my day. But yeah, things are going well here so far.
Nice. Yes, it's like towards the end, 7 o'clock here.
A little bit different. Thank you so much for being willing to do this. It's always very nice to... And maybe nice isn't even the right word, but it's just always interesting and fun to get someone who is not in the United States to talk about this topic. I mean, it's fun to get anybody to talk about this topic, but getting a different perspective from a different place, I think is super important. And so I'm glad that you're lending your voice to the project.
Yeah.
Well, maybe just kind of briefly, because obviously this could send us off into a much longer conversation. Maybe you could just briefly let me know why you even wanted to do this conversation. It's a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about. You know, people don't like talking about death. Or I guess I should maybe preface that with, that's how it is here. Maybe it's different there. But maybe you can just give me like a little brief kind of idea of why you wanted to talk about death and have this conversation with me.
Of course. That's a great question, in fact, because it's exactly the reason I want to do this conversation, because most people don't want to talk about death.
Yeah.
And I'm always considered as a radical person.
Nice.
So I like to do radical conversations.
Perfect.
And my connection with death started when I was like 22 years old because I lost my mom.
Okay.
And it was like too early for losing your mom at this age.
Absolutely.
And although she was sick throughout my upbringing because she had cancer, I never thought that she would die because we never had this conversation. I wish we had this conversation, to be honest. And I would have appreciated a lot. So I think, I don't know if there is any culture where they, like in the West society, that they really talk about death. And I think that it's very important that we have to start speaking about it because death is the only thing that is sure that's going to happen to our body after we're born.
Yep.
And yet no one speaks about it.
Yeah.
We put it under the carpet all the time.
Yes, absolutely. Well, yeah,
we have to normalize it.
Absolutely. I was kind of slightly hoping they'd be like, no, everybody talks about death here all the time. But yeah, kind of like you said, it's just, at least in Western culture, it feels very swept under the rug, like put aside, let's not talk about it. I don't want to think about it. I'm excited to talk with you. I know a little bit about you from your application and everything, but before we kind of dive into the full conversation, I've kind of alluded to it a couple times, but just to kind of get to know you and obviously keeping the anonymity thing, maybe you could let people know where you're calling from. Normally I say city, state, but maybe country, city, whatever you want to do there. And then your favorite book and why.
Well, I am calling from Sweden, but I am originally from Greece.
Okay.
However, I consider myself a citizen of the world because I've lived in many different.
Okay.
It just happened that I was in Greece, and it just happened that now I'm in Sweden.
And who knows in a year from now.
Exactly. Yeah, there is so much uncertainty now. My favorite book, wow, I think the book I lately speak about is very close to the theme of our conversation.
Okay.
So it's The Wild Edge of Sorrow by Francis Weller.
Yep.
I don't know if you're aware, yeah?
I know of the book. I have not read it. But I say this.
I strongly recommend it.
I was going to say, I feel like people are probably getting tired of me saying this, but it's on my list. Every time someone recommends a book, I'm like, oh yeah, I my book list is way too long, but that's one that I've had, pretty high up, and I say this too a lot. Maybe this will push me to put it the next couple books that I read.
It's very nourishing, especially if you have lost someone, the time that you're grieving. It's really helpful to read this book. It's like really very, very nourishing.
And is that why you would say it's kind of like your favorite? Is it just kind of this great encapsulation of that process, I guess?
It's very deep. It's very spiritual. It's very like authentic. And yeah, I mean, I wish I could sometime maybe translate it to my mother tongue.
Is your, and this is completely off the topic, but is your mother tongue Greek?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Just curious, since you said you're a person of the world and all this stuff, like I was just curious, but we've gotten to know you a little bit. And now I think we can just dive into the heart of the conversation and start with, what do you think happens when we die?
So I believe that I am a soul having a human experience.
Okay.
So I believe that we are just souls in a body sometime, and then we just leave the body and we continue our life, our soul.
And what does that look like to you?
So I believe that it must be really hard the moment we have to leave back the body. The soul must be a little bit confused, like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
I recently participated in a workshop for intuitive animal communication. So we spoke a lot about death occurring in non-human animals and how we have to help them spiritually to do to transform.
Yeah.
To take the path.
Yeah.
To leave back the body. And for example, in that workshop, we talked a lot about trying to communicate with the spirit of the animal before they die and ask them what they want us to do with the body. Some dogs, they want to be buried. Other dogs, they want to be cremated. Not all the dogs want the same. Some of the ones that want to be cremated, for example, or they don't want, they said, at least please let my person be the last one who will touch my body, not an unknown person.
Ugh.
So
this is going to make me cry. Sorry.
Yeah,
love dogs.
I mean, crying is really part of life as well.
Yeah.
We should be able to cry, so don't apologize.
Yeah.
And also, I love dogs. And last year, 13 months ago, I lost my soul dog. So when I'm speaking about
I'm
dogs,
so sorry.
and I'm also having another dog who is eventually going to die as well. So there is a lot of anticipatory grief here. So the thing is, what I haven't really understood, because I have read a lot, I have studied a lot about near-death experiences and spiritual books about dying and death. What I haven't really understood is, because I believe that our soul eventually will inhabit another body at some point. What I don't know is after how long.
Oh, okay.
And for example, the thought that is troubling me is that, okay, when I'm going to die, can I meet my soul dog, or he's going to be in the body of another animal? And then I will have to wait for him to die. But then again, I think that the concept of time doesn't exist in that dimension.
Oh, this is fascinating. I love conversations like this where it intermingles death and time. And I guess I'm going to steal something from an earlier caller, but like a consciousness soup or like a soul soup kind of thing where, you know, we all meet somewhere and hopefully we get to, meet our loved ones and our animals again. And so at least when I've kind of read up on kind of this type of idea or theory, I guess the question that I have is then what are we doing here now? I know from some religions and some ideologies that this is, you know, I chose this life to learn a specific lesson. And so I'm here to learn this lesson. And then I go back to quote unquote the soul realm. And then I pick another lesson. You know, is it something like that? Or is this just like, we're just doing this thing and there's not necessarily any rhyme or reason to it? Like, do you have any inclinations around that?
Yes, so I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual.
Yeah.
And I believe exactly what you said. I believe that we are coming into a body in order to have a specific experience, in order to learn a lesson. And I even know which is my lesson for this body, for this time of my life.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And yes, although it's really hard to accept that we have chosen to be in that body, because especially if you have grown up with abusive environments, non-healthy environments, you're like often saying, you know, I never asked to be born. I never asked to be brought to this world. Also, I'm an antinatalist, so I'm against procreation because I believe that, you know, we bring people into existence without their will. But this contradicts my idea of, you know, spiritually, we want to come in this specific body.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a reason for us to exist in a specific time and specific place. And we have a mission, and it doesn't have to do anything with religion.
Yeah, totally.
That's, the way
and then
maybe also religion saying this, I don't know.
Yeah. Is there an end? Is there a point where you acquire all the knowledge, you know, after whether it's tens, hundreds, thousands of lifetimes? Is there something that you see as, hey, you know, like, and is that enlightenment, you know, as, you know, oh, I'm an enlightened being now and I've learned all my lessons. Do you feel like there's an ending to the process, to the learning?
Yeah, I hear you. And it's a very interesting question. I've never really thought about it, but I would say that I feel that I am a very old soul, so I wish I'm not going to inhabit another body in the future. So I think that maybe the end would be like, okay, we have inhabited a lot of bodies, so from now on we can just exist in the soul state. So we don't have to go in another body anymore.
And then I know you said, and this is a slight joke, I know you said that, you know, maybe in the soul realm time doesn't matter, but then you can just, once you're there, once you've, you know, attained all the knowledge that you need, then you just like wait for your pets to figure it out. And, you know, then, you know, every time they come around for a cycle, like, come on, Jackson, you didn't figure it out this time. All right, well, I'll be waiting next time you come back around. But then you don't have to like time it up or anything. It'll be great.
Yeah. That's a nice way to see it. I like it. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see if it pans out.
I totally tend to think that my dog who died, he was an old soul, whereas my dog who is still alive, he's a very new soul.
Yeah.
So he has to come back again and again. So thank you for giving me this idea. Yeah, I can see myself out there with my dog with the old soul, waiting for this dog to come again and again. Like, did you learn this time?
It's funny because now that you say it, and partially I'd say my older dog is an old soul. I mean, he's old. He's 18, so I'll lose him soon. But I feel like he's always been just like you said. Like I've never actually like really put that together. But he always has felt like an old soul, just kind of very relaxed. And he did have his puppy phase or whatever, but it was just very like relaxed, like to nap. And then I have a younger dog, which again, he's younger, so he has energy, but he definitely feels like a younger soul. I feel like you have perfectly described my two dogs of like. They are those ages, old and young, but they are definitely like their souls definitely are very different. So yeah, I think Daxon will probably be waiting for me, be like, finally, you learned your lessons. And then Walter will just, he'll be, multiple lifetimes before he figures out all his lessons. But I am super curious from your application, and you talked a little bit about losing your mom. You also talked about losing your dog, but grief is, and this may be a weird way of phrasing it, but grief is a huge part of your life. It's something that you are working with now. So I'm curious if maybe you could talk about that a little bit more and what that journey has been like.
Of course it is, yes. And thank you for asking this because I'm like on a career change. So I have been grieving since, 22 years old for sure. But lately the grief has accumulated because I experienced ecological grief. I don't know if you have ever
I haven't. You
haven't. So people experience ecological grief lately due to the climate change, which I prefer to call climate collapse. So people are actively grieving the world as they knew it in the past. And when you have this type of grief, it's perfectly healthy. There is nothing wrong with this. It doesn't mean that you need support from therapist or something, but you need to be able to share your grief in a safe container with other people. So I joined the grief circle for ecological grief after the hottest summer of my life in Greece. And it was a very supportive environment. It was online. So we were people from all over the world experiencing extreme weather events and sharing our eco-anxiety because it's related also with the anxiety that we feel due to these events. So I started studying how we can be resilient when these things are happening. And then I also realized that there is a term for the grief that we feel when we are expecting someone that we love to die, the anticipatory grief. And it was exactly what I was experiencing because I knew that my dogs were growing old and I was crying even in the idea that I'm going to lose them because they were really like my soul dog. He was like a therapy dog, let's say. He was really helping me during all the difficult times of my life.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see myself without him. It was like my extension because also we were living very isolated. So after he died, I was devastated. It was like, I didn't even want to live anymore. So I found an online seminar, a webinar on grief, 4 levels, and I started studying this. Like I learned everything about grief, and it really helped me understand my own feelings because I'm a scientist. So as a scientist and a researcher, I think that I process things better when I know exactly what they are,
I think I'm very similar to you in that way, but I also think that's probably true for a lot of people, right? Even if you're not a scientist, it's like if you understand what's going on inside your body, it definitely helps comprehend, like if you can put a name to it, I think that helps. Or like, oh yeah, this thing that I'm feeling is grief. Whether, instead of, I thought this was unrelated or whatever. Like, I think when people can put a name to something, that really helps. Or it can help. I think it can also cause other issues probably, but sorry, continue.
Some people, yes, but many people, they don't really care or they don't really know. Maybe it's also culture related. Maybe in the States, people want more to give a name for what's happening.
I don't know about that. I don't want to give the States too much credit because I don't know if we're doing much right over here. So
okay. Anyway, so from I took this seminar and many things made sense at last. And there was a moment in the seminar that they are explaining what is desensitized grief. So this is a type of grief that we are not acknowledging in the society. But the whole seminar was very human-centered. And I'm an activist for animal rights. I advocate for animal liberation. I was like, where are the animals? Like, why no one speaks about them? They were not even speaking. I mean, maybe they barely mentioned one or twice, losing a dog, but that was it.
Yeah.
And I am a person who have rescued all types of animals, like monkeys and cats and dogs and birds. And so I love all the animals equally. I'm an anti-speciesist. So
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, because as an animal advocate for animal liberation, I fight speciesism, which for me is the highest form of discrimination. So under speciesism, we have racism and sexism and all the other types. So when we say that it's okay to have a dog and a cat in our lap, but then we can go and eat a cow or a pig, this is speciesism. So it comes like from the like racism, speciesism. I'm very interested, and I would like, because I have volunteered in many animal sanctuaries, like wild animals in the beginning and then in farm sanctuaries.
Yeah.
So I have seen a lot of sorrow when people who rescue this type of animals, they lose them and they grieve. But, they have nowhere to speak about.
Yeah.
Who can speak about grieving a pig or a cow or a chicken or a duck, And so eventually I studied even more grief. So I became a grief recovery specialist. And I have just started my practice. So I help people by educating them, by giving them the tools that can help someone overcome grief. But I didn't say this correctly, because we don't overcome grief. We learn how to live with grief, but it's like maybe the best is to say how to overcome accumulated unresolved grief. That's the best way to say it.
Yeah. Language does get tricky around this topic, right? Because it is... it's very important.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Like subtle phrasing changes things so much. Yeah.
I want to help people, because several people call me like, oh, I lost my mother. How did you manage losing your mother so young? Or I lost my dog, I lost my cat. And because it's really, really hard to lose someone. And I think it's that hard because we don't speak about death and we don't speak about grief.
Yeah.
These things they are not hot, they are not sexy. No one wants to speak about them. They are not positive. We have this toxic positivity, speaking only about positive things out there.
Yeah.
So I think that, I would like to make a living as a grief recovery specialist, but I want to also start a nonprofit, and I want to develop some grief education courses, online courses, but they are going to be anti-species. They are going to speak about grief related to all animals, because all people should have the ability to be able to speak about the grief, no matter who are they grieving.
Yeah.
No matter how small or big the animal has been, no matter how many years or months or days this animal has been in the life.
Yeah. I think at least, I don't know, this project for me is, relatively new. I mean, I've been doing it for about 3 years. The podcast is more recent than that. But one of the huge reasons that I started it was because of Jackson. He was 15 at the time. And I was like, hey, he's getting older. He's going to die soon. And I have these unresolved, and I don't know if I'll ever really resolve my feelings and fears and anxieties around death, but I have these feelings and emotions that I'm not dealing with. And I need to talk about it. I need to figure a way to work through this. But there is such a long time of the process. I would say it's only been within the last couple months where, I've started seeing stuff pop up. It's probably the algorithm or me being connected to a lot of death-related stuff. But I've been seeing more things about animal loss. And I would say mostly, dog loss is what I would say has been popping up for me, which the algorithm is working in that way. But I would say for so long, I felt embarrassed to mention it on here or in any relation to the project, because it's like, I'm talking to people who have lost you lost your mother. And I've talked to people who have lost siblings and just all these big losses. And I'm like, I don't want to mention Jackson. That seems selfish and unfair. And it's, very recently where I'm like, hey, you know what? It's okay to we don't need to compare grief. We don't need to compare that is not helpful in any sense. And I know to some extent, like you said, I've had Jackson for 18 years. He's been with me through he's been with me through all of the hardest times in my life. And so that will be a huge devastating loss for me. I love hearing you talk about animals and that being part of this process and you bringing that into your practice and what you're doing because it is important. That was my long ramble.
The most important thing that you said is that we should never compare grief.
Yeah.
I mean, I lost my mom, but I have to admit it was harder to lose my first cat. I know that people are maybe shocked when they're going to listen to this, but
you're not the first person that
not...
I've heard say something like that. I've had multiple people say similar things like this. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Like I loved my mother and she was my best friend and we had an amazing relationship. But my cat was the extension of myself for 12 years. She was there when I was studying, when I was taking all my degrees. And she was really like, she helped me stop having sleeping issues. And again, when I lost my dog, I was like, how did I manage like them losing, my mom and my cat? Now losing him is like, but of course, each time we lose someone, even if it's a human or a non-human animal, the grief brings also, we have other things that are emerging. So each loss brings other losses from before that they are unresolved.
Yeah, so, cumulative.
Excuse me. So exactly, yeah. And the grief recovery method has a specific different program for pet loss, and it has a specific book, and that's why I love it because at least for dogs, cats, horses, bunnies, like the typical animals that people have as pets, to have a specific book about how to, manage, how to deal with this kind of loss. It's very important.
Yeah.
But I want to take it further than these animals. I don't want to have specific animals in a book like, okay, it's okay for them, but what about the others? Because really, when people are rescuing animals, the one after the other, and like, I mean about going in a slaughterhouse and rescuing very big, large animals and having put so much energy then to take care of them because we didn't really know how to take care of these animals in the past. And we are just now learning. More and more vegan people go out and rescue these kind of animals, and then we don't have MRIs for pigs, for example. Just in Canada some years ago, there was the first one for the first rescued big pig. So, when you put so much love and so much energy in saving an individual and then taking care of them, and then you suddenly lose them, it's a huge loss.
Yeah.
And people need to be able to speak about these losses and not feeling ashamed, and you should never feel ashamed.
Because it's love, right?
Everyone has the right. Yes, of course. It's pure. It is the purest love.
Yeah.
I think that recently scientists have said that losing your dog is even equal to losing your kid. It's a psychiatrist who told me that. And I'm also, I'm advocating for child-free life. So as you said, it's true. It's not only in the States. More and more people decide not to have kids.
Yep.
Instead, they rescue, they adopt animals, and these are their kids. And we can have non-human kids. So you give all your love, all your energy to them. And when they leave, there is a huge loss, a huge gap, a huge absence that we have to deal with. So, of course, everyone should have the right to speak about these losses equally.
Yeah, again, I love that you're incorporating that, because I was going to even ask, like, if you were specializing more in animal, but it seems, and it makes so much sense when you talk about it to some extent, but we're also animals. Humans are animals. We like to think that we're not. And so you are focusing on animals, but that includes us. And I think that is another thing that we've done, is just separate ourselves from the world, the natural world, so much that we are different than, we're not animals. We're humans. We're special. But I love that you're incorporating that and bringing that all together, because like I said, I've definitely felt some embarrassment of just like, I am really anxious and worried about losing Jackson. And so, yeah, I haven't talked about it very much, but
you are experiencing anticipatory grief as well, and it's a very humane thing to experience. And yes, it's a hard time. It's hard because it's not really possible to prepare ourselves.
Yeah.
Because I'm also having the same feelings for my dog Caramello.
Yeah.
And it's also something that you should be able to share. Like, there are some people who are specializing on pet loss, and they speak a lot about anticipatory grief. And to answer your question, yes, I have decided to prioritize supporting people who are experiencing grief related to a loss of a non-human animal.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I tend to say human and non-human animals because we are animals as well. And as you said, this is a very big issue. We have forgotten that we are just one more animal species, Homo sapiens. And this human supremacy is the top of the pyramid of what we have created to the world. All this pain and all this damage comes from that point of view. Like we are something higher, something bigger, and we are not.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do want to change directions in a second, but I think before I do that, I am just curious about a huge part of this project for me is my anxieties and my fears. And so do you have fears around death? And what has the journey around learning more about grief done to your thoughts around death, if that makes sense?
I think that from the moment I lost my mother and I read so many near-death experience cases, I stopped feeling afraid. Death. However, I have a fear because I have been struggling with depression for many years in my life in the past. And during these times, I become suicidal. So I really don't want to ever do this because I have a fear. And from what I have read, like in spiritual books, if people die by suicide, something really not nice is happening after. So it's like never really being able to go where you should go because you have done it before it should have happened. So maybe my only fear is that I don't want to ever be depressed again because I don't want to ever go close to that again.
Yeah, that's fair.
And you said one more. Could you please repeat the next? You said something.
I think just how has this journey of learning about grief impacted your kind of like outlook on death? And I think we've touched on this already, probably a decent amount, but I'm just curious if you have anything else to add there of...
I think maybe it has helped me being able to speak about it, like I want to decide and say to my partner, practically what we are going to do with my body when I'm not going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
I want to have this conversation early now because I don't want to be buried and I don't want to be sent to Greece. I don't want anything religious to happen. I want the most environmentally friendly way of just, letting my body rot and become compost for the soil. So I think, this whole Greece education has helped me doing these conversations around death. And, when you start saying these things, people say, "Oh, don't, stop! You are so young. You should not." No, I should.
I hear
because we
hear,
never know.
hear that a lot. Hear that a lot. Yeah.
I'm sure you are.
Statistically, very likely that we'll live to 70s, 80s. Statistically, but there are a ton of outliers of those statistics, and there is no guarantee that you are not one of those outliers. We walk around like we are guaranteed a full, quote unquote, whatever full lifetime is. There's no guarantees that this is going to continue, that I'm going to be around. And so might as well try to do the things that I want to do around this and build the things versus, I don't know, staying stagnant or whatever. But that was a long rant again. Yes, you go. It's way more interesting when you talk than when I talk.
It's your podcast, so you should talk as well. Don't apologize. I was just about to say something that maybe is going to create some eco-anxiety to some people, but I don't want to do this. I really want to say this because when you said about it's very possible that someone will die from a car accident. Nowadays, it's even possible that we may die from a flood, like a woman in Athens died in a flood the other day. So there are so many people who will start dying from a heat wave, and there are all these extreme weather events. Some people here in Sweden died from a snowstorm. So these things in the past were not happening as often as they do now.
Yeah. What did you call it? Climate collapse? Is that what you were?
Yeah, I call it climate collapse.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm speaking about being present in an extreme weather event without being informed about it beforehand. So you may die suddenly and you would not expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. I live in Portland, Oregon, and we have a pretty temperate climate, I would say. But it was, 3 or 4 years ago now. Actually, I always do this after the pandemic. I always add 2 years. So It was probably about 5 years ago. We had this heat wave where for like 3 or 4 days in a row, and we barely get. And sorry, I'm gonna do Fahrenheit because we're dumb Americans. I don't know the Celsius conversion, but
it's okay. It's okay.
I would say we get a couple days of a year that are over 100 degrees. And we had this like 3 or 4 or 5 day stretch where 3 of the days were 113, 114, and 117. And I think in Seattle, which is the city 3 hours north, and Portland are 2 of the lowest cities in the United States with air conditioning. And so during these heat waves, there were a bunch of people that didn't have air conditioning, were in really, really hot houses, and there were a lot of deaths that came from that. So that's really, I don't want to say good to point out. I mean, it's a shitty fact that you have to point out, but it's an important fact to point out that what you're saying.
What we could use is insightful, maybe. It's an insightful observation.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when I hear you, I think of a person that I met in that grief circle of Eco Grief who moved from Oregon to Canada exactly because of the heat waves. And it's exactly what I also did. I moved from Greece to Sweden because I couldn't bear anymore the heat waves and the wildfire. So we are climate migrants, and in the future we're going to have climate refugees.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to touch on this for a second because I think it's you bring a different perspective, especially living in multiple places around the world. But we don't have to dive in this for super long, but I am curious, we've talked about this a little bit, but what does the climate, and I mean that as in like, the people around you, what does death awareness, death talk, grief look like? I mean, we've touched on it a little bit, that it sounds, Western and similar to the States in ways. But I always think it's interesting when I get someone on here who's not from the States to kind of hear perspectives about how people talk about death, how people talk about grief. And I know this could be like a super, super big question. And, we've been talking for 45 minutes, so I don't want to talk your ear off or anything. But I think it's interesting to touch on at least for a minute because you bring a different perspective there.
Yeah, well, thank you for this question. First of all, I have to say that I'm very new in Sweden, so it's been just 6 months I'm here.
Okay.
And I have not been like into the Swedish society yet. My friends are also people from other countries who happen to live here. I have like only a couple of Swedes. We have not really talked about death yet. I also wonder how they manage to go like better in terms of economy and maybe we would say sustainability, although I just experienced the destruction of the forest. It's maybe a myth, I could say, that these countries are very eco-friendly. But in Greece, for example, I have lived in Greece, in Spain, in France, the Netherlands. I don't think that so far I have found a place that it's easier to talk about death or that people like to be in the funeral, for example, in Greece is really uncomfortable. There is a lot of crying. There is a lot of... I think the problem with death nowadays is that people don't apply the rituals that they were applying in the past. So
we've gotten pushed so far away from it.
Yeah, we are not used to see, for example, we're not used to seeing dead bodies.
Yeah.
So, for example, I remember when my grandfather died and I had to go to the funeral, I was so shocked seeing him, serious in his dead body. And I was like, this is not my grandpa.
Yeah.
And I was very shocked by this image. And I have read when I was all these years studying that Ireland is a country, maybe this is where you should find someone to speak from, because they are speaking about death from young age. I don't know if it's a specific community or place in Ireland, but they are more like open in speaking about death.
Oh, interesting.
And I didn't know anything about that. I heard it in a TED Talk like a couple of years ago. But I can share with you that in Mexico, because my partner is half Greek and Mexican, and when he lost his dad, he had to go and he experienced there the funeral. People there are wearing white clothes. They are not wearing black. And then people there are celebrating the life of the person who have died.
Yeah.
They are not crying because that person died. So they are not focusing on the death. They are focusing on the life of the person.
Absolutely.
And for me, this is so much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we focus on what's happening now and we don't cherish like what has happened until that day, it's very sad because the soul is somewhere there, seeing all these people just crying over a dead body. And it must be very frustrating for the soul, to see all the beloved people being in such tremendous suffering while they're just still somewhere around, just not in that body anymore. So I think that if I would like to ever be in a funeral again, because after my mother died, I really don't, I avoid them very much.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would like to be in a funeral in Mexico if life would ever bring me there, because I would like to see it in a very different, in another perspective, in a positive perspective. Because death is just like, I want to share with you my favorite quote from one of my very favorite songs from Anathema.
Yeah.
So it goes like, life is not the opposite of death. Birth is the opposite of life is eternal. So this is it. Yeah. Life is eternal.
I like that.
Just a passage.
One of these days, I really want to make my way down to Mexico for Day of the Dead. Just kind of see that kind of celebration. I mean, like you said, I think that's exactly what you're saying, is it doesn't feel like this morbid and depressing thing. It feels like a celebration of life. And I haven't lost very many people in my life, but the memories that I have of losing, it's kind of strange. I lost both of my grandpas within a month. And
oh, wow.
I was very close with my mom's dad, and we were kind of all around his bedside as he passed. And we were drinking whiskey because he loves whiskey. He wasn't drinking whiskey, but the family was. And we were telling all these stories about him. And I think we were all, especially the younger generation, we were hearing some stories about him that we had never heard. And then my dad's dad, it was a little bit different. But his mom, my great grandma, who I knew, I think she died when I was 18. So I knew her for a decent amount of time, but she was like the matriarch of the family. She was a badass. She was awesome. And when my dad's dad died, maybe this is bad, but we ended up talking about my grandma a lot and just the memory of her and these stories. And it's those things that I remember. And I think, when it becomes this somber affair, and I don't know, I mean, I know maybe a little bit from talking to a lot of people about death, but you being in the grief world and knowing that, it just seems like a much healthier way of grieving and relating to the person who has passed. So I'm with you, where I want people, although I don't really like drinking anymore, but I want people to be doing shots. I want people to have a party when I die. I don't want people to be sad. I think that's the last thing that I'd want. And I get that people will be sad. I'm not saying, you're not allowed to feel that emotion, but it should be a celebration of who I was and not, I don't want it sometimes feels like what we create is something that just heightens sadness. And at least for me, I don't want that. So I do hope you make it down to Mexico. Well, I was going to say, how should I I was going to say, I also want to phrase that right, because essentially what I was saying is I hope you get to make it to Mexico for a funeral. So I'm kind of hoping that someone dies. So I don't know if that's a great way of phrasing it. So I don't know. I'm gonna step out of the hole that I just walked into or whatever. But I do have one final question for you. Mm-hmm. And so, what's one thing you still want to experience in this lifetime?
I think it would be what I just said, to travel with a sailboat, to travel as much as environmentally friendly as I can. So maybe sailing, it would be that.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you make your way, although it'd be a long trek from Sweden to the Oregon coast, but if you on your journeys make your way to the Oregon coast, let me know and I'll come out and we can I don't know, do something. I don't know.
Chat with you in person.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if I make it over there at some point, I'll do the same. But yeah,
Of course. Yes, please.
I just want to say thank you. I really, really appreciate
you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate your project.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing my best to, I guess I don't even know some days what I'm trying to do with this anymore because there's so many facets with it. But I'm grateful that you're willing to come on and have a conversation and share your knowledge that you have been accumulating through these classes and all that stuff. And it's always really wonderful to get international callers. So yeah, thank you so much. And I had a wonderful time chatting with you.
Thank you. Have a good life. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. There's something about this conversation that feels incredibly timely for me, especially the piece about anticipatory grief. the not knowing how to hold something before it's even happened yet. This caller has done a lot of work to understand that feeling, and in a lot of ways, this is a huge reason why this project exists in the first place. This past week has been heavy. A dear friend of the podcast reached out with some difficult news, and honestly, it's been hard to think about much else. This is someone who's been a teacher to me, someone who's challenged me to grow this project, and over the last couple years has become a really good friend. I don't want to get into too much of the detail right now, but I'll likely be sharing more soon. It's also why there was no Saturday contemplation this past weekend. I've been preparing for what could be a very special episode connected to this, but it's all still very new, and I want to be careful about getting too ahead of myself. What I will say is that I'm grateful that this project has brought people like this into my life. That is not something I take lightly, and I'm incredibly honored that I get to do it. I'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little bit differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. And if a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Leave a message at 971-328-0864 and share whatever death has stirred in your life. Listener support truly helps keep this project going. If you'd like to support the podcast, you'll find a link in the show notes. And as always, please like, share, and follow. Every bit makes a difference. Until next time, have a good life.